They trashed her bag at the security checkpoint, then froze when they saw the emblem inside. To them, she was just another tired woman in line. But inside that battered leather bag was the evidence that could bring down a billion-dollar military empire. They thought tearing it apart would destroy her. Instead, they uncovered a medal, the kind only true war heroes earn. The crowd went silent. The officers backed away. And the lies they'd been hiding? About to explode. Who is she really? And why does a ruthless corporation want her silenced before she reaches Congress? What happens when the system messes with the wrong soldier? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. Colonel Rebecca Torres shifted her worn leather messenger bag closer as she walked through the sliding doors of Hartwell International Airport. The familiar smell of coffee and cleaning supplies filled the air, mixing with the constant hum of rolling suitcases and hurried footsteps. After 3 weeks of undercover work, even the harsh fluorescent lighting felt oddly comforting. She ran her fingers through her dark hair, catching sight of the new streaks of gray in her reflection on a nearby window. The classified mission had taken its toll, but the evidence secured in her bag made it all worthwhile. Documents, photos, and hard drives that proved Titan Industries had knowingly supplied defective body armor to troops, evidence that had already cost 2 whistleblowers their lives. "Just need to make it to Washington," she whispered to herself, adjusting the strap of her messenger bag. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders harder than the bag itself. Somewhere in the Capitol, a congressional committee was waiting for her testimony, waiting to hear how one of the military's biggest contractors had chosen profit over soldiers' lives. Becca checked her watch. 6 hours until her flight to Washington, D.C. Plenty of time to clear security and find a quiet corner to review her notes. She had traded her uniform for civilian clothes, worn jeans, a faded blue sweater, and comfortable walking shoes. The casual outfit helped her blend in with the crowd, just another tired traveler making their way home. As she approached the security checkpoint, something made her pause. The TSA agents seemed unusually alert, their eyes scanning the crowd with more intensity than normal. One agent in particular kept glancing at his phone, then back at the lines of passengers. "It's just routine," Becca told herself, but 20 years of military service had taught her to trust her instincts. She took her place in line, carefully observing her surroundings while appearing to check her phone. 3 agents at the scanner instead of the usual 2. A supervisor hovering nearby, speaking quietly into his radio. The line moved forward slowly. Becca's training kicked in as she cataloged potential exits and choke points. Her heart rate remained steady. She had faced worse situations in Afghanistan. The memory of saving her platoon from an ambush flashed through her mind, along with the medal ceremony that followed. But this was different. This time, the enemy wore suits instead of combat gear, and their weapons were boardroom decisions that killed just as effectively as bullets. "Next in line," called the TSA agent, his voice cutting through her thoughts. Becca stepped forward, maintaining a calm exterior while her mind raced. The evidence in her bag would pass any normal security check. Everything was properly documented and cleared. But if Titan Industries had corrupted officials here, as they had in other places— "ID and boarding pass, please," the agent said, extending his hand. She handed over her documents, noting how the agent's eyes lingered on her name a fraction too long. His fingers tapped something into his computer, and Becca caught the reflection of another agent moving closer in the polished surface of a nearby pillar. "Everything appears to be in order, ma'am," the agent said, but his tone suggested otherwise. "Please proceed to the scanner." Becca picked up her bag, acutely aware of the precious cargo inside. The faces of dead soldiers flashed through her mind, young men and women who would still be alive if Titan Industries had provided the protection they promised. She thought of the generals now sitting in prison cells because she had refused to stay silent about war crimes. This evidence was just as important, just as vital to protect. She placed her shoes in the gray bin, followed by her jacket. The messenger bag would have to go through the X-ray machine. For a moment, her hand tightened on the strap, reluctant to let go of something so important. But showing any sign of concern would only draw more attention. As she waited to walk through the scanner, Becca noticed more subtle signs that something was wrong. The usual flow of passengers had slowed to a trickle. The TSA supervisor was now speaking rapidly into his radio. His back turned to the checkpoint, but his posture tense. "Step forward, please," the agent directed her toward the scanner. Becca complied, her mind already gaming out scenarios. The evidence had to reach Washington. Too many people had died to let it be intercepted now. As she stood with her arms raised in the scanner, she observed the X-ray operator studying her bag's contents with unusual intensity. Her military training had taught her to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Right now, both her training and her instincts were screaming that something was very wrong at Hartwell International Airport. But she had faced impossible odds before and prevailed. Whatever came next, she would find a way to complete her mission. The scanner beeped and Becca lowered her arms. She could see her messenger bag emerging from the X-ray machine, still intact, still holding the truth that could save countless lives. Now she just had to make it to her gate, assuming the checkpoint was the only obstacle Titan Industries had placed in her path. "Thank you for your patience," the TSA agent said mechanically, but his eyes were cold and evaluating. "You may collect your belongings." Becca gathered her shoes and jacket, slipping them back on with deliberate calm. She reached for her messenger bag, feeling the weight of its contents, the weight of responsibility. The truth about Titan Industries was right here, within reach of those who would do anything to keep it buried. Agent Marcus Kellerman adjusted his TSA uniform for the third time in 5 minutes, tugging at the collar that felt too tight around his neck. From his supervisory position near the checkpoint, he watched Colonel Torres through nervous eyes that wouldn't stay still. His fingers tapped against the radio at his hip, a habit that intensified whenever Titan Industries required his special services. "That's her," he muttered into his radio, voice barely above a whisper. "The woman in the blue sweater with the leather messenger bag. Rita, get ready for a random inspection." TSA agent Rita Valdez acknowledged with a subtle nod from her position at the secondary screening station. They had worked together on similar operations before, identifying and intimidating whistleblowers for Titan Industries. The money was good, very good, and Kellerman had grown accustomed to the extra income that supplemented his modest government salary. He watched Colonel Torres collecting her belongings, noting how carefully she handled that worn messenger bag. The morning briefing from his Titan Industries contact had been clear. That bag contained evidence that could cost the company billions in military contracts. His job was simple: find a reason to confiscate it. Kellerman straightened his back and approached her, forcing authority into his stride. "Excuse me, ma'am. I'm Agent Kellerman, TSA supervisor. Your bag has been randomly selected for additional screening." Becca Torres turned to face him, her brown eyes sharp and evaluating. She showed no outward sign of concern, but Kellerman had learned to read people during his years at the checkpoint. The subtle shift in her stance, the way her hand tightened on the bag's strap, she knew this wasn't random. "Of course," she replied evenly. "Where would you like me to go?" "Right this way." Kellerman gestured toward the secondary screening area where Rita waited. He noticed other passengers watching now, their curious glances lingering on the scene unfolding before them. A businessman in an expensive suit frowned, checking his watch with obvious disapproval. A young mother pulled her children closer, sensing the tension in the air. At the screening table, Kellerman pulled on a fresh pair of blue latex gloves, snapping them against his wrists with unnecessary force. "Please place your bag on the table and step back." Becca complied, her movements measured and controlled. She stood with her arms crossed, watching as Kellerman unzipped the main compartment with aggressive efficiency. Rita positioned herself on the opposite side of the table, her hand resting near her radio, ready to call for backup if needed. "What exactly are you looking for?" Becca asked, her voice carrying just enough edge to make Kellerman's hands pause momentarily. "Standard procedure, ma'am." The lie came easily to his lips. "We've had some security concerns today." He began removing items from the bag, setting them aside with none of the care they deserved. A laptop, files in manila envelopes, external hard drives. More passengers had stopped to watch now. A teenage girl raised her phone, probably hoping to capture another viral video of TSA overreach. Kellerman felt sweat forming on his forehead despite the airport's cool air conditioning. "Those materials are classified," Becca said firmly as Kellerman reached for one of the sealed envelopes. "I have proper documentation and clearance." Kellerman's fingers trembled slightly as he reached for the envelope anyway. The morning's phone call echoed in his mind. The promised bonus would cover 6 months of mortgage payments. "Documentation can be forged, ma'am. We have to be thorough." "Agent Kellerman." Becca's voice had dropped lower, carrying the unmistakable authority of a military commander. "You are about to handle classified material without proper clearance. I suggest you reconsider." A small crowd had gathered now, their presence adding to Kellerman's growing discomfort. He could hear their whispers, see their disapproving looks. An elderly veteran wearing a Korean war cap shook his head slowly, his expression making Kellerman's cheeks burn with shame. But the thought of that bonus steeled his resolve. His hands moved toward the envelope again. "Ma'am, if you interfere with this inspection, I'll have to call airport police." Rita shifted her position, trying to block the teenage girl's camera phone. More phones had appeared in the crowd, their lenses focused on the increasingly tense scene. A well-dressed woman in the gathering crowd spoke loudly to her companion. "This is ridiculous. They're clearly harassing her." Kellerman's hands were fully sweating now, making the latex gloves stick unpleasantly. He had done this before, intimidated other whistleblowers, confiscated suspicious materials, earned his extra pay from Titan Industries. But something felt different this time. Colonel Torres stood perfectly still, radiating a quiet confidence that made his authority feel like the cheap pretense it was. "Final warning," Becca said quietly, her eyes locked on his. "That envelope stays sealed." The crowd had grown larger. Kellerman could feel their judgment, their camera phones recording his every move. His breath came faster as he realized this situation was slipping beyond his control. The power he usually felt behind his badge had evaporated under Colonel Torres's steady gaze and the public's scrutiny. But he couldn't back down, not with Rita watching, not with Titan Industries' money on the line. His hand closed around the envelope, and he saw something change in Becca's eyes. Not fear or anger, but a kind of resigned determination that made his stomach clench. "Agent Kellerman," she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "I am Colonel Rebecca Torres, United States Army, carrying classified materials under congressional protection. By attempting to open that envelope, you are committing a federal offense." The whispers in the crowd grew louder. More phones appeared. Rita took a step back, suddenly finding something very interesting to look at on the far wall. Kellerman's hand remained frozen on the envelope as he realized just how badly he had miscalculated the situation. Kellerman's face flushed red with frustration and embarrassment. In one sudden, violent motion, he upended Becca's messenger bag over the inspection table. The contents crashed onto the metal surface, scattering in all directions. "What are you doing?" Becca's voice cut through the shocked gasps of onlookers. Files spilled from torn manila envelopes. Her laptop skidded across the table, its corner chipping against the metal edge. USB drives clattered like thrown dice. Her personal items, a family photo, a small notebook, a half-empty pack of mint gum, scattered among the classified materials. The crowd of passengers grew larger, their phones raised high to capture every moment. A businessman in an expensive suit spoke loudly into his phone. "Yes, I'm watching a TSA agent deliberately destroy someone's property right now at Hartwell International. Sir, you need to stop recording," Rita called out, but her voice lacked conviction. More phones appeared in response, their camera lenses gleaming like accusatory eyes. Kellerman's hands shook as he roughly sorted through the scattered papers. His latex gloves left smudges on the official documents marked "Classified" in bold red letters. "These could be forgeries," he announced, his voice cracking. "We have to verify everything." "Those are congressional documents," Becca said, her calm tone a stark contrast to Kellerman's increasing agitation. She stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind her back in a military pose that seemed to draw even more attention from the crowd. "You're tampering with federal evidence." A sharp voice cut through the tension. "What's going on here?" Airport Security Chief Diana Chang strode toward the checkpoint, her crisp uniform and commanding presence parting the crowd of spectators. She took in the scene, the scattered documents, the growing crowd, Kellerman's obvious distress. "Chief Chang," Kellerman straightened up, relief washing over his face. "We have a security situation. This passenger's documents need to be verified. They could be Dash." "They're legitimate," Becca interrupted, turning to face Chang. "I'm Colonel Rebecca Torres, and I'm carrying classified materials under congressional protection. Your agent is deliberately tampering with federal evidence." Chang's eyes narrowed as she surveyed the chaos on the table. "Agent Kellerman is following standard procedures for suspicious items," she said, but uncertainty crept into her voice as she noticed the official seals and watermarks on the scattered papers. Kellerman seized on Chang's apparent support, becoming more aggressive in his search. His hands moved frantically over the leather bag, pressing and prodding. "There could be hidden compartments, forbidden items. We have to be thorough in our inspection." A young woman in the crowd spoke up. "This is going on Twitter right now. Look how he's destroying her stuff." Becca watched Kellerman's desperate examination with growing certainty. This was no random search. This was a coordinated attempt to prevent her evidence from reaching Congress. Her testimony about Titan Industries' defective equipment had the power to cancel billions in military contracts. They must have people watching the airports, waiting for her. Kellerman's fingers found a seam in the bag's lining. "Aha!" he exclaimed, ripping at the leather. "Hidden compartments." "Those are standard diplomatic security features," Becca said, her voice carrying to the dozens of phones recording the scene. "The bag is designed to protect classified materials during transport, something you would know if you actually had the clearance to inspect them." Chang stepped closer to the table, her professional mask slipping as she began to realize something wasn't right. "Agent Kellerman, perhaps we should—" "No!" Kellerman's shout echoed through the terminal. He tore at the bag's reinforced lining, revealing the carefully engineered compartments designed to protect sensitive documents during transport. More files spilled out along with a small hard drive labeled with congressional seals. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. The Korean War veteran pushed forward, his weathered face tight with anger. "Look at how they're treating a colonel's property. In my day, this would never have happened." Kellerman grabbed the hard drive, his latex-covered fingers slipping on its smooth surface. "This could be anything. It needs to be confiscated for further inspection." "That's enough." Chang's voice cracked like a whip. She was looking at the scattered documents with new eyes, finally seeing the official markings, the congressional seals, the military security codes. "Agent Kellerman, step away from the table." But Kellerman couldn't stop now. He had gone too far, destroyed too much. The promised money from Titan Industries seemed to burn in his thoughts as he grabbed another handful of documents. His elbow knocked Becca's laptop closer to the table's edge. "If you damage that laptop," Becca said quietly, "you'll be destroying evidence in a federal investigation. The consequences dash." The laptop crashed to the floor before she could finish. The sound of cracking plastic and electronics silenced the crowd for a moment. Then the terminal erupted with angry voices and the clicking of phone cameras. "He did that on purpose. Did you get that on video? Someone call the police." Chief Chang grabbed Kellerman's arm, finally understanding that something was terribly wrong. "Agent Kellerman, you are suspended effective immediately. Step away from the inspection area." But Kellerman shrugged off her grip, his eyes wild as he turned back to the scattered evidence of Titan Industries' corruption. He had to destroy it, had to protect his interests, had to dash. "Security to checkpoint 3, Chang barked into her radio. "I need officers here now." Becca stood in the midst of her scattered belongings, watching as her carefully gathered evidence lay exposed on the cold metal table. The classified documents that could save soldiers' lives, the proof of corporate corruption that had cost American lives, all of it spread out under the harsh airport lights and the glowing screens of dozens of phones. She caught Kellerman's frantic eyes and saw the truth there. This wasn't just about airport security or random searches. This was about power, money, and the lengths some people would go to protect their interests. Her mission hadn't ended with gathering the evidence. Now she had to protect it, here in this crowded airport terminal, under the gaze of countless witnesses with their recording phones raised high. Chapter 4. The scattered contents of Becca's bag lay across the inspection table like evidence of a crime, but not the kind Kellerman had hoped to find. His latex-covered fingers trembled as he tore through another hidden compartment, desperate for something to justify his increasingly aggressive search. Then he found it. The Distinguished Service Cross emblem gleamed under the harsh airport lights, its gold and blue surface unmarred despite the rough handling. Kellerman's hands froze as he recognized the medal, one of the highest military decorations for extraordinary heroism in combat. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The Korean War veteran who had been watching pushed forward, his voice thick with emotion. "That's a Distinguished Service Cross. My brother earned one of those in Vietnam." He turned to the other passengers, pointing at the medal. "They don't give those out for nothing, folks. That's for valor above and beyond." The terminal fell silent. Phones lowered slightly as their owners processed what they were seeing. This wasn't just another passenger being harassed. This was a decorated war hero. Chief Diana Chang stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the emblem. Her professional mask slipped as memories flooded back. Memories of her brother Michael, who had served under Colonel Torres in Afghanistan. Michael had told her stories about the colonel before his final mission, about how she'd saved an entire platoon by holding off insurgents single-handedly, giving the wounded time to evacuate. "Colonel Torres," Chang said softly, remembering more of Michael's letters. "You were there when my brother—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Becca's eyes softened with recognition. Michael Chang. He was a brave soldier. He saved 3 of his teammates that day. The crowd listened intently as Chang spoke again, her voice carrying through the hushed terminal. "My brother wrote to me about you before he died. He said you were the most honest officer he'd ever served under. That you always put your soldiers first." A young woman in a business suit stepped forward, her phone still recording. "Wait, Colonel Torres? The one who testified against those corrupt generals last year. I remember reading about that case." "She exposed a whole ring of corruption," another passenger added. "It was all over the news. They were taking bribes to approve substandard equipment contracts." Understanding dawned on Chang's face as she looked at the scattered documents on the table. This wasn't a routine security check. This was something else entirely. Kellerman's face had gone pale. His hands shook as he tried to maintain his authority. The medal. It could be a fake. Everything needs to be verified. "That's enough, Agent Kellerman." Chang's voice was steel. "I know exactly who Colonel Torres is. My brother died serving under her command, and he trusted her with his life." The Korean War veteran spoke up again, addressing the crowd. "This woman's a hero, and look how they're treating her. In my day, a Distinguished Service Cross meant something." Phones raised higher as more passengers began recording. Social media posts were already spreading through the airport. A group of soldiers in civilian clothes, waiting for their own flights, had gathered at the edges of the crowd. Their faces showed a mixture of respect and barely contained anger at Kellerman's treatment of a decorated officer. "Colonel Torres exposed war profiteers," one of the soldiers called out. "She's the reason we got better body armor last year." Becca stood straight and calm amid the chaos, her bearing unmistakably military despite her civilian clothes. She looked at Chang, recognizing the pain of loss they shared. "Your brother was right about one thing, Chief Chang. I've always believed in putting our soldiers first. That's why I'm carrying these documents. More lives are at stake." Chang nodded slowly, years of military family history and personal loss weighing against her official duties. She turned to Kellerman, who was still clutching the Distinguished Service Cross emblem. "Put that down, Agent Kellerman, now." "But my orders—" Kellerman caught himself too late. "Your orders?" Chang's eyes narrowed. "TSA agents don't receive orders about specific passengers. Who told you to target Colonel Torres?" The crowd grew quieter, sensing the shift in power. Kellerman's authority was crumbling as quickly as his composure. He placed the medal back on the table with trembling hands, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen it. Everyone knew what it meant. A business executive near the front of the crowd spoke into his phone. Yes, I'm watching them harass a Distinguished Service Cross recipient at Hartwell International. She's the one who exposed that military contractor scandal last year. More voices joined in, each adding pieces to Becca's story that they remembered from news reports. Her testimony against corrupt officials, her dedication to soldier safety, her unwavering integrity in the face of threats and bribes. "My son serves," a mother in the crowd called out. "Colonel Torres is the reason his unit got new equipment. The good stuff, not the cheap garbage they were sending before." Chang looked at the scattered documents with new understanding. The congressional seals, the classified markings, they told a story of continued dedication to truth and service. She thought of Michael's last letter, where he'd written about an officer who never compromised, who always fought for what was right. "Colonel," Chang said, her decision made, "I think we've seen enough here." She turned to the gathering of airport police officers who had responded to her earlier call. "Please escort Agent Kellerman to my office. He has some explaining to do about these orders he mentioned." The Distinguished Service Cross lay on the inspection table, its gold surface catching the light. More than a medal, it had become a symbol of everything Becca Torres represented: courage, integrity, and unwavering dedication to truth. The crowd of passengers and airport staff who had gathered to witness a security check now understood they were seeing something far more significant. A continuation of the same battle for truth and accountability that had earned her that medal in the first place. Diana Chang led Kellerman away from the inspection table, her face set with determination. The crowd parted to let them pass, phones still recording every moment. In a quieter corner of the terminal, Chang's questioning began. "Who exactly gave you these orders, Agent Kellerman?" Her voice was calm but firm. "Because I've been chief of security here for 8 years, and TSA protocols don't work this way." Kellerman's confident facade had crumbled. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fumbled with his phone, trying to appear professional. I need to make a call to my supervisor." "Your TSA supervisor?" Chang pressed. "Or someone else?" Before he could answer, more veterans emerged from the crowd. A gray-haired woman in a Marine Corps cap approached Becca, standing at attention before offering a crisp salute. "Master Sergeant Claire Martinez, retired colonel. My unit served alongside yours in Kandahar. What you did for those boys that day? Well, ma'am, you've got friends here." 2 more veterans joined them, forming a protective circle around the security checkpoint. They weren't threatening or aggressive, they simply stood watch, their military bearing unmistakable, even in civilian clothes. Chang watched this unfold while keeping one eye on Kellerman, who was now speaking urgently into his phone in hushed tones. She caught fragments of his conversation. "A situation compromised, need immediate assistance, and too many witnesses." The memory of her brother Michael's last letter played in her mind. He had written about Colonel Torres's leadership during a particularly difficult mission. "She never asks us to take risks she wouldn't take herself, Di. When things get rough, she's right there with us, that kind of integrity. You don't see it every day." More passengers joined the impromptu gathering. A flight attendant who had served in the National Guard shared a story about how Becca's testimony had led to improved safety equipment for military transport crews. A businessman mentioned his son's unit receiving proper body armor after her last congressional hearing. Kellerman's phone call became more frantic. "Sir, I understand, but there are too many." "Yes, I know what's at stake. They're all recording everything." Chang moved closer, her security training picking up on his growing desperation. She could hear a sharp voice on the other end of the line. "Handle it now, or Titan will handle you." "Titan Industries?" Chang interrupted, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "The defense contractor under investigation for selling defective equipment to our troops?" Kellerman's phone clattered to the floor. The voice on the other end went silent. More veterans had gathered now, forming an informal honor guard around Becca and her scattered belongings. They helped her carefully collect the classified documents, treating each paper with the respect it deserved. The Korean War veteran who had first recognized the Distinguished Service Cross supervised the process, ensuring nothing was left behind. "My brother served with you too, Colonel," a young woman in airport maintenance uniform said, stepping forward. "Joey Martinez." He said you saved their whole platoon when the Taliban had them pinned down. Said you ran through enemy fire to reach the wounded. Becca nodded, remembering. Your brother was a fine soldier. He helped me get 3 injured men to safety that day. The crowd's murmuring grew louder as more stories emerged. Each one painted a picture of an officer who put her troops first, who fought corruption wherever she found it, who never backed down when soldiers' lives were at stake. Kellerman's desperation peaked. He tried to edge away from Chang, reaching for his phone again. I need to call for backup. The only backup you'll be seeing is airport police. Chang cut him off, gesturing to 2 officers who had been standing ready. And after we discuss your connection to Titan Industries, we'll be having a long talk with federal authorities. The terminal had transformed. What began as an aggressive security inspection had become something else entirely. A spontaneous gathering of veterans, military families, and ordinary citizens, all united in support of a soldier who had risked everything to protect others. A young soldier in civilian clothes, home on leave, approached Becca. Colonel, my unit got the new protective gear last month. The real stuff, not the knockoffs. That was because of your last testimony, wasn't it? Becca smiled slightly, her first real smile since entering the terminal. Every soldier deserves proper equipment. No exceptions. Chang watched Kellerman as he was led away by airport police, his earlier arrogance replaced by visible panic. She heard him muttering into his phone one last time. Send everyone. Titan needs to shut this down now. The veterans exchanged knowing looks. Whatever Titan Industries had planned, they would have to get through this impromptu band of brothers and sisters first. More off-duty military personnel had arrived, drawn by social media posts spreading through the airport. They didn't make threats or cause disruptions. They simply stood ready, a quiet reminder of the bonds forged in service. Chang thought of her brother Michael's final letter once more. He had written about trust, about knowing who would have your back when things got tough. Looking at the scene before her, decorated veterans standing shoulder to shoulder with civilian supporters, all united to protect a leader they believed in, she finally understood exactly what he had meant. The Distinguished Service Cross gleamed on the table, no longer just a medal, but a symbol of everything these people had gathered to defend. Not just Colonel Torres, but the principles she fought for: honesty, integrity, and the unwavering duty to protect those who serve. Kellerman's plan had more than backfired. It had awakened something powerful. In trying to isolate one whistleblower, he had instead united a community. The terminal had become more than just another airport security checkpoint. It had become a testament to the bonds that connect those who serve, and the power of standing together against corruption. The main terminal doors slid open with a soft hiss. Vincent Caruso strode through them like he owned the place, his expensive Italian shoes clicking against the polished floor. 6 men in dark suits flanked him, their earpieces and stern expressions meant to intimidate. They moved with military precision, but Becca's trained eye caught the telltale signs. These weren't federal agents, but private contractors. Caruso's silver hair caught the fluorescent lighting as he approached the security checkpoint. His cold blue eyes surveyed the scene, taking in the gathered veterans, the scattered documents, and the phone cameras still recording everything. His practiced smile never reached those eyes. Colonel Torres, he called out, his voice carrying across the terminal with practiced authority. I'm Vincent Caruso, CEO of Titan Industries. These gentlemen are federal agents here to secure classified materials that may compromise national security. Becca stood her ground, studying the credentials one of the men held up. The badge looked genuine at first glance, but she'd worked with enough federal agencies to spot the subtle differences. The holographic overlay was slightly off. The serial numbers followed the wrong pattern. Those aren't real federal credentials, she said clearly, making sure her voice carried to the phones still recording. And you know it, Mr. Caruso. The CEO's smile tightened. Colonel, you're in possession of proprietary information that could damage ongoing military operations. We have authorization to confiscate these materials immediately. Diana Chang stepped forward, her security badge prominently displayed. Sir, I'm going to need to see proper documentation for that authorization. And I mean real federal documentation, not whatever those men are carrying. The veterans in the crowd shifted closer, their protective circle tightening. Master Sergeant Martinez moved to stand directly beside Becca, her weathered face set in stone. Other former service members took up positions around the security checkpoint, creating an informal perimeter. Caruso's composure cracked for just a moment. His eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. Dozens of witnesses, multiple cameras recording, and a group of veterans who clearly weren't going to back down. He pulled out his phone, speaking into it quietly but urgently. "Get me Senator Harrison, yes now, and send the second team." He turned back to Becca, his voice harder now. "Colonel Torres, you're interfering with a matter of national security. These documents contain sensitive information about ongoing military operations." "These documents," Becca replied steadily, "contain evidence of fraud. Evidence showing how Titan Industries knowingly supplied defective equipment to our troops. Equipment that got soldiers killed." A murmur ran through the crowd. One of Caruso's men reached for something under his jacket, but Chang's sharp voice cut through the tension. "Airport security cameras are recording everything," she announced, "and I've already notified actual federal authorities about unauthorized armed individuals in my terminal." Caruso's contractors exchanged uncertain glances. They were used to operating in shadows, not under the scrutiny of dozens of phones and security cameras. Their hands stayed near their concealed weapons, but they didn't make any moves. "Colonel Torres?" Caruso tried again, his tone shifting to something almost reasonable. "Let's discuss this privately. I'm sure we can reach an arrangement that benefits everyone." "Like the arrangements you made with General Phillips?" Becca asked. "Before he signed off on those defective helmets? The ones that failed to stop rounds they were rated to stop?" More veterans moved forward, their faces hardening at the mention of the faulty equipment. A young soldier home on leave spoke up from the crowd. "My buddy took a round to his helmet in Kandahar," he said, voice shaking with anger. "The armor was supposed to stop it. Instead, we lost him. Was that one of your helmets, Mr. Caruso?" The CEO's practiced smile vanished completely. He gestured to his contractors, who began to spread out, trying to flank the group of veterans. But for every move they made, another former service member stepped up to block their path. "This is your last chance to hand over those documents voluntarily," Caruso said, all pretense of diplomacy gone. "Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." "Like you made things difficult for the families of dead soldiers?" Chang asked. "When you covered up the equipment failures?" Becca carefully gathered the documents, keeping them in clear view of the cameras. "Everything here is evidence for my congressional testimony tomorrow. Evidence about how your company knowingly supplied defective equipment to our troops, how you bribed officials to cover it up, how soldiers died because of your fraud." Caruso's contractors moved closer, hands now openly reaching for weapons. The crowd tensed, but nobody backed down. Veterans who had faced worse threats than corporate thugs stood their ground, forming a human barrier between Becca and Caruso's men. "You're making a serious mistake," Caruso warned, his cold eyes scanning the crowd. "This goes higher than you know. There are senators, generals." "Corrupt officials you bribed," Becca cut him off. "And we have proof of every payment, every cover-up, every death you caused to save money." The terminal had gone completely silent except for the soft beeping of phones recording everything. Caruso's face had turned an angry red, his carefully maintained control slipping away as his plan unraveled. "Take the documents," he ordered his men, "now." The contractors moved forward, but before they could take another step, the distinct sound of multiple safeties being clicked off echoed through the terminal. Real federal agents had arrived, their credentials genuine and their weapons drawn. "Vincent Caruso," a senior agent announced, "step away from Colonel Torres and put your hands where we can see them. Your contractors are to surrender any weapons immediately." Caruso stood frozen, watching as his carefully constructed plan collapsed around him. His contractors, faced with actual federal agents, slowly raised their hands. They were mercenaries, not martyrs, and this had gone far beyond what they'd signed up for. The CEO's face twisted with rage as he looked at Becca, his mask of civilized authority completely gone. "This isn't over, Colonel. You have no idea what you're dealing with." "No, Mr. Caruso," Becca replied calmly, still making sure the cameras caught everything. "I know exactly what I'm dealing with, and tomorrow, so will Congress." "Take her down," Caruso barked at his contractors. "Get those documents." Two men lunged forward, reaching for Becca's arms. Their mistake was assuming she would react like a civilian. 20 years of military combat training took over in an instant. Becca stepped smoothly to the side, letting the first man's momentum carry him past her. Her elbow caught him hard in the solar plexus as he stumbled by. He doubled over, gasping for air. The second contractor grabbed for her shoulder, but Becca was already moving. She trapped his extended arm, using his own weight against him as she redirected his charge. He crashed into the security desk with a loud thud. "Stand down," she commanded in her battlefield voice, the tone that had carried across firefights in Afghanistan. "There are civilians present." The contractors hesitated, unused to facing trained resistance. Becca used that moment to create space, positioning herself between them and the crowd of onlookers. Security cameras whirred above, recording every movement. "Get the documents," Caruso shouted, his face red with fury. "Whatever it takes." 3 more contractors moved in, trying to circle around her. Becca's eyes darted between them, cataloging threats. The one on her left had his hand inside his jacket, likely reaching for a weapon. The 2 on her right were spreading out, attempting to flank her. She moved first, closing the distance to the armed contractor before he could draw. Her palm strike to his throat dropped him to his knees. As he fell, she stripped the concealed pistol from his shoulder holster and smoothly disassembled it, parts clattering across the floor. "Colonel," Diana Cheng called out, "real federal agents are 3 minutes out." The 2 remaining contractors attacked simultaneously. Becca ducked under a wild swing, her counterstrike precise and devastating. The contractor stumbled back, blood streaming from his nose. His partner managed to grab her arm, but Becca rolled with the hold, using techniques perfected in countless training sessions. The contractor found himself airborne, then crashed hard onto his back. "Stay down," Becca warned as she regained her fighting stance. "You're all being recorded." The first 2 contractors had recovered and rejoined the fight. They were well trained, but their expertise was in intimidation and crowd control. Becca's experience came from actual combat, where hesitation meant death. She moved like water between their attacks, each strike calculated and efficient. One contractor overextended himself trying to tackle her. Becca used his momentum to throw him into his approaching partner. Both men went down in a tangle of limbs. The contractor with the bloody nose charged in, but Becca sidestepped and swept his legs out from under him. He hit the ground hard enough to crack the tile. "Federal agents!" A new voice boomed across the terminal. "Everyone freeze!" Real federal agents poured into the secure area, weapons drawn. Unlike the contractors' fake credentials, their FBI badges were genuine. They moved with practiced precision, securing the scene. "Hands where we can see them," the lead agent ordered. "Everyone on the ground now." Caruso's contractors, already battered from their encounter with Becca, complied quickly. They lay face down on the floor, hands spread wide. Only Vincent Caruso remained standing, his expensive suit wrinkled, his carefully maintained composure shattered. "This is a misunderstanding," he tried, reaching inside his jacket. "Sir, hands where we can see them," an agent snapped, weapon-trained center mass. Caruso slowly withdrew his hand, holding a business card. "Call this number. Senator Harrison will explain everything." "Sir, on the ground," the agent repeated firmly. "We'll sort out the calls later." Becca stood calmly in the center of the chaos she'd created, her breathing steady despite the exertion. 5 trained contractors lay groaning on the floor around her. Security cameras had captured every moment of her efficient defense. Diana Cheng approached with several airport security officers. "Colonel Torres, are you all right?" "I'm fine," Becca assured her, straightening her jacket. "The documents are secure." The crowd that had gathered to watch erupted in applause. Veterans who had witnessed the fight nodded in approval. They recognized the level of training and discipline Becca had displayed. Camera phones were still recording everything, ensuring that Caruso's attempted theft of evidence would be well documented. FBI agents began securing the scene, collecting weapons and identifying everyone involved. One agent approached Becca, his badge displayed prominently. "Colonel Torres? I'm Special Agent Rodriguez. We received multiple reports of armed individuals impersonating federal agents. Can you tell me what happened here?" Becca gestured to the contractors being handcuffed. These men, working for Vincent Caruso of Titan Industries, attempted to confiscate evidence bound for a congressional hearing. When I refused to hand over the documents, they tried to take them by force. Rodriguez looked at the groaning contractors, then back at Becca with newfound respect. "You did this?" "They made the mistake of assuming I was an easy target," Becca said simply. More agents were arriving, securing the terminal and interviewing witnesses. Diana Chang was already providing them with security camera footage. The veterans who had stood with Becca gave their statements, describing how Caruso's men had tried to overwhelm her. Caruso himself sat handcuffed on a bench, his previous arrogance replaced by barely contained rage. He watched as agents collected his contractors' weapons and fake credentials, building an airtight case of attempted robbery and impersonating federal agents. "The evidence stays with me," Becca told Rodriguez firmly. "I have orders to deliver it directly to Congress." The agent nodded. "We'll provide an escort to ensure you reach Washington safely. After what just happened, it's clear someone doesn't want those documents made public." Becca gathered her scattered belongings, securing the evidence in her bag. Her military training had served her well, allowing her to protect both the documents and the civilians around her. The security cameras had captured everything, ensuring that Caruso's desperate attempt to silence her would only add to his crimes. The terminal slowly returned to normal as agents led away Caruso and his contractors. Travelers who had witnessed the fight watched in amazement as Becca calmly helped airport staff clean up the scattered debris from the confrontation. She had faced down armed men without hesitation, demonstrating the skills that had earned her combat decorations. Air Marshal James Rodriguez sat in the airport's security office, monitoring radio traffic while completing paperwork from his last flight. His hand paused over the forms when a familiar voice crackled through the speaker. "Stand down. There are civilians present." The command tone struck him like a physical blow. He'd heard that same voice during firefights in Afghanistan, steady and authoritative, even under heavy fire. Colonel Torres, his former commanding officer. Jimmy leaned forward, turning up the volume. Security chatter filled the channels as the situation unfolded. His throat tightened when he heard the name Titan Industries. 3 years ago, that company's defective equipment had cost him half his squad. The memory of burning Humvees and screaming soldiers still haunted his dreams. His radio crackled again. "All available officers to Terminal C security checkpoint. Detain suspect Rebecca Torres, considered armed and dangerous." Jimmy's fingers clenched around his pen until his knuckles went white. Colonel Torres, dangerous? The woman who'd carried Private Chen through sniper fire to reach a medic? Who'd stayed with Sergeant Miller's family for 2 weeks after presenting his folded flag? "She's protecting evidence," he muttered, remembering how Titan's lawyers had buried their responsibility under mountains of paperwork. How many other soldiers had died because of their faulty equipment? His desk phone rang. "Rodriguez here. This is Chief Harrison. Get to Terminal C and take Torres into custody. She's interfering with a federal investigation." Jimmy stood slowly, his decision already made. "Yes, sir, I'm on my way." He grabbed his jacket and headed for Terminal C, but not to arrest anyone. If Colonel Torres was fighting Titan Industries, she was fighting for justice, for his lost squad mates. The scene at the checkpoint was chaos. 5 men lay groaning on the floor while FBI agents secured the area. Jimmy spotted Colonel Torres immediately, standing calm and collected despite the havoc around her. She looked older than he remembered, with threads of gray in her dark hair, but her eyes held the same unwavering determination. "Colonel," he called out, approaching with his credentials displayed. She turned, recognition lighting her face. "Oh, Captain Rodriguez?" "It's still Jimmy, ma'am." He gestured toward a service corridor. "We need to move. More security's coming, and they have orders to detain you." Becca studied him for a moment, weighing his loyalty against the risks. Titan Industries. They killed my squad with their defective armor. Jimmy's voice cracked slightly. I've been waiting 3 years for someone to make them answer for it. Understanding passed between them, the shared pain of losing soldiers, the frustration of watching corruption go unpunished. Becca nodded once, trusting her former officer. Lead the way, Captain. Jimmy guided her through the service corridor, using his security access to bypass locked doors. The evidence you're carrying, it proves what they did? Everything, Becca confirmed. Manufacturing records, falsified test results, bribes to inspectors, enough to bring down their entire operation. Then we'll make sure it reaches Congress. Jimmy's jaw set with determination. For Chen, Miller, and all the others they killed with their greed. They moved quickly through the airport's restricted areas, Jimmy's credentials clearing their path. Years of rage at Titan's escape from justice fueled his resolve. He wasn't just helping his former commander. He was finally fighting back against the corruption that had cost him his friends. Diana Chang stood in her office, staring at her computer screen in horror. What had started as a routine security log check had uncovered something far more sinister. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through years of flagged passenger reports. All military personnel, all targeted for extra screening under Kellerman's supervision. The pattern was unmistakable. Every soldier or officer who had connections to Titan Industries' military contracts had been subjected to random searches. Their belongings had been photographed, their documents screened, their movements tracked through the terminal. The dates matched perfectly with known whistleblower intimidation cases she'd read about in the news. "Oh, God," she whispered, opening another file. There was her brother Michael's name from his last flight before deployment. The flight where he'd mentioned concerns about his unit's equipment to her. The same equipment that had failed catastrophically 2 weeks later, killing him and 3 others. The office door burst open. "Chief Chang, we need..." Kellerman stopped short when he saw her expression. "What are you doing?" Diana turned her screen away. "Reviewing security protocols." Her voice was steady despite the rage building inside her. "Standard procedure after an incident." Kellerman's eyes darted to the computer, then back to her face. "You shouldn't waste time on that. We need to contain the Torres situation." "Like you contained other military personnel?" Diana's hand clenched into a fist under her desk. "How long have you been selling information to Titan Industries, Marcus?" The color drained from his face. "I don't know what you're talking about." 2018. Diana's voice shook. "Lieutenant Michael Chang, my brother. You flagged his passage through this airport and reported it to your handlers. 2 weeks later, he was dead because of faulty equipment." Kellerman backed toward the door. "You don't understand. They pay well, and all I do is watch for potential problems. If soldiers want to complain about equipment, they should follow proper channels." "Proper channels?" Diana stood slowly. "Like Colonel Torres is doing right now? Carrying evidence to Congress through official channels, only to be attacked in my airport?" "It's just business," Kellerman said, reaching for the door handle. "Everyone gets paid, everyone stays quiet. Nobody needs to get hurt." "My brother got hurt." Diana pressed the silent alarm under her desk. "And you helped cover it up. How many other soldiers died because you helped Titan silence whistleblowers?" Security officers appeared in the doorway behind Kellerman. His shoulders slumped as he realized he was trapped. "Take him into custody," Diana ordered. "Contact Federal Aviation Administration Security and the FBI. They'll want to see these files." She turned back to her computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'm sending copies to every federal agency I can think of. This ends today." The security officers led Kellerman away as Diana continued working. Each file she opened revealed more connections, more military personnel targeted, more evidence of systematic corruption. Her brother's face stayed fixed in her mind, driving her forward as she documented everything. "This is for you, Michael," she whispered, attaching the files to secure government addresses, "and for every other soldier they betrayed." The video spread like wildfire across social media platforms. Shaky smartphone footage showed Colonel Torres defending herself against armed men in suits, her movements precise and controlled, despite being outnumbered. Another clip captured the moment Diana Chang's security team surrounded Marcus Kellerman, the corrupt TSA supervisor now in handcuffs. In the airport's secure conference room, Special Agent Sarah Martinez of the FBI watched the footage on multiple screens, her expression growing darker with each new angle. How many views so far? Over 2 million and climbing, her tech analyst reported. The hashtag Justice for Soldiers is trending nationwide. People are sharing stories about family members who died using Titan Industries equipment. Martinez turned to Captain Rodriguez, who stood at parade rest near the wall. Walk me through it again, Captain. From the beginning. Jimmy's jaw tightened as he recalled finding his squad members' bodies after their equipment failed. Titan Industries supplied faulty respiratory gear to forward operating bases in Afghanistan. When soldiers started reporting problems, the complaints disappeared. Anyone who pushed too hard got transferred or faced disciplinary action. And Colonel Torres has proof? Martinez asked. Documents, internal emails, test results showing they knew the equipment was defective. Jimmy's voice carried the weight of personal loss. They kept selling it anyway, kept taking taxpayer money for gear that got Americans killed. On the screens, news channels picked up the story. Amateur videos from the airport played alongside photos of fallen soldiers. Reporters stood outside Titan Industries headquarters, where Vincent Caruso's security team blocked all access. Diana Chang entered the conference room carrying a thick folder. We found more. Years of surveillance records showing how Kellerman targeted military personnel for Titan. They used airport security to identify and track potential whistleblowers. Martinez spread the documents across the table. This is systematic corruption on an unprecedented scale. Bribes, intimidation, falsified safety reports. She paused at one paper. They charged the military $800 for filter cartridges that cost $12 to make, and they knew they were defective. The door opened again as Colonel Torres entered, escorted by 2 FBI agents. Despite her ordeal, she carried herself with quiet dignity. Those cartridges failed under normal combat conditions. 19 soldiers died before I could gather enough evidence. 23 now, Jimmy added softly. 4 more last month in classified operations. Social media notifications kept pinging on the analysts' computers. Veterans groups were organizing protests outside Titan facilities nationwide. Military families shared photos of loved ones lost to equipment failures. The story couldn't be contained. At Titan headquarters, Vincent Caruso watched his empire crumble on multiple news channels. His phone rang constantly. Investors pulling out, board members resigning, politicians suddenly unavailable for calls. His carefully constructed network of influence dissolved under the harsh light of public scrutiny. Back at the airport, Martinez's team coordinated with other federal agencies. Homeland Security is securing all Titan facilities. The Pentagon has frozen their contracts. SEC is investigating their financial records. She looked at Torres. Your evidence, combined with Chang's security footage and Rodriguez's testimony, gives us everything we need for indictments. The public won't let this be buried, Diana said, checking her phone. Every major news outlet is covering it. Social media is exploding with first-hand accounts from soldiers who dealt with Titan's equipment. Colonel Torres stood at the window watching more FBI vehicles arrive. How many lives could we have saved if someone had exposed this sooner? Jimmy moved to stand beside her. You did expose it. You finished what my squad members died trying to report. His voice softened. What matters now is making sure it never happens again. On the screens, coverage continued as federal agents led Titan executives out of their offices in handcuffs. The truth had finally broken through, carried on a wave of public outrage that no amount of corporate power could suppress. The underground parking garage echoed with footsteps as Colonel Rebecca Torres walked between the concrete pillars, flanked by Captain Jimmy Rodriguez and Diana Chang. After hours of FBI interviews, they were finally heading home. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the nearly empty level. My car's in Section C, Diana said, checking her phone. I can drive you both to the safe house. Jimmy scanned their surroundings, his training keeping him alert. Something felt wrong. The garage was too quiet, too empty for this time of day. He noticed movement in his peripheral vision, a shadow where there shouldn't be one. "Get down!" he shouted, tackling Becca as gunfire erupted. Bullets sparked off concrete pillars as they rolled behind a parked SUV. Diana dove for cover behind another vehicle, drawing her service weapon. "3 shooters," Becca said calmly, her military training taking over. 2 by the exit ramp, 1 moving between the cars to our left. Above them, in the terminal, veterans who had supported Becca earlier heard the gunshots. Several rushed to the garage entrance, their combat experience driving them to help. Airport security cameras swiveled to focus on the scene as news crews, still covering the earlier confrontation, raced toward the sound of gunfire. "This is Chang," Diana spoke into her radio. "Shots fired in parking level 3. Multiple armed suspects. Colonel Torres is the target." Jimmy spotted one of the shooters moving closer. "Professional hit team," he muttered. "High-end gear, military training. Has to be Caruso." As if confirming his words, Vincent Caruso's voice carried across the garage through a megaphone. "Just finish it. We can't let her testify." The garage erupted in chaos as news cameras captured Caruso's words on live television. Millions of viewers watched as the CEO of Titan Industries ordered the assassination of a decorated war hero. Veterans from the terminal engaged the hit team from behind, creating a crossfire that forced the assassins to retreat. "Federal agents," FBI Special Agent Martinez's voice boomed through the structure. "Drop your weapons." But Caruso was beyond reason. "Kill her, whatever it takes." His desperate commands echoed through the garage and across live broadcasts. Social media exploded with real-time footage as phones captured every moment. Jimmy and Becca moved in perfect sync, their shared combat experience evident as they outflanked one of the shooters. Diana provided covering fire while coordinating with airport security to seal all exits. The veterans, many still wearing their service badges or military caps, created a protective perimeter. "It's over, Caruso," Becca called out. "You're just making it worse." "You've ruined everything." Caruso's voice cracked with desperation. He emerged from behind a pillar, pointing a pistol with shaking hands. "Do you know how many years I spent building this? The connections, the contracts, all of it." News helicopters hovered outside, their cameras capturing every second through the garage's open sides. The world watched as Vincent Caruso, the once powerful CEO, completely unraveled. "You killed American soldiers," Jimmy said, his voice carrying the weight of personal loss. "You knew the equipment was defective. You let them die to save money." FBI agents moved in from multiple directions as the hit team surrendered, but Caruso raised his weapon, aiming at Becca. "You don't get to destroy me." 3 shots rang out simultaneously, Diana from the left, Jimmy from the right, and a veteran named Mike Thompson from behind. Caruso's pistol flew from his hand as he collapsed, wounded but alive. The entire sequence played out on live television, providing undeniable proof of the conspiracy's violent depths. "Vincent Caruso," Agent Martinez said, securing his hands behind his back, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, among other charges." She looked at the news cameras. "And it's all on tape." The garage filled with FBI agents and medical personnel. Reporters crowded the entrance, broadcasting live updates. Footage of Caruso ordering the hit played on every major network, alongside clips of veterans rushing to protect Colonel Torres. Jimmy helped Becca to her feet, checking her for injuries. "You okay?" She nodded, watching as federal agents led Caruso away. "It's really over." "He tried to have you killed on live television," Diana said, holstering her weapon. "If anyone still doubted your evidence about Titan Industries, they don't anymore." The veterans who had helped protect her gathered around, offering support and congratulations. Their presence had turned what was meant to be a quiet assassination into a very public failure, one that would seal both Caruso's fate and Titan Industries' downfall. The Senate hearing room buzzed with anticipation. Colonel Rebecca Torres sat at the witness table, her worn leather messenger bag, now a symbol of resistance against corruption, resting beside her chair. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating the packed gallery where Jimmy Rodriguez, Diana Chang, and dozens of veterans waited to hear her testimony. "Colonel Torres," Senator Mitchell began, "please share with the committee what you discovered about Titan Industries' military contracts." Becca's clear voice carried through the chamber as she methodically presented her evidence. She detailed how Titan Industries had knowingly supplied defective equipment to troops, leading to countless preventable deaths. Security footage from the airport incident played on large screens, showing Caruso's desperate attempt to silence her. "The company falsified safety reports," she explained, her hand steady as she pointed to projected documents. "They knew the failure rates, but they buried the data and bribed inspectors. American soldiers died because profit margins were more important than their lives." In the gallery, Jimmy watched with pride and pain. Each revelation brought back memories of friends lost to faulty equipment, but seeing Becca expose the truth helped heal those old wounds. Their eyes met briefly, and she drew strength from his presence. Vincent Caruso and his executives sat in the defendant's section, their expensive suits unable to mask their defeat. When presented with evidence of their crimes, they invoked their Fifth Amendment rights, but their silence spoke volumes. Furthermore, Becca continued, the company established an elaborate system to identify and intimidate potential whistleblowers. She gestured to where Marcus Kellerman and Rita Valdez sat in custody. They corrupted Transportation Security Administration personnel to target military personnel traveling through airports, specifically those carrying sensitive information. Diana Chang took the stand next, describing how she discovered Kellerman's betrayal. "They used our security protocols as weapons against the very people we were supposed to protect. That ends today." The committee's verdict was swift and unanimous. Criminal charges were filed against Caruso and his co-conspirators for fraud, negligent homicide, and attempted murder. Kellerman and Valdez faced federal charges for corruption and obstruction of justice. 2 weeks later, Diana Chang stood in her new office as airport security director, implementing comprehensive reforms. "We're overhauling all security protocols," she told her staff. "No more corruption in our ranks. We protect people, not profits." The real healing, however, happened away from the cameras and committees. Becca found Jimmy in Arlington National Cemetery, kneeling before the graves of his fallen squad members. "They got justice today," she said softly, placing her hand on his shoulder. He covered her hand with his own, drawing her closer. "Thanks to you. You finished what they tried to expose." "What we exposed?" she corrected him. "I couldn't have done it without you." They walked among the white headstones, their shared grief and triumph drawing them closer. Jimmy stopped beneath a flowering cherry tree, turning to face her. "I've been offered a position at the Federal Air Marshal Training Center," he said, "teaching new recruits how to spot and stop corruption." Becca smiled, remembering her own news. "The Military Justice School wants me to develop their investigative training program. Apparently they think I have some experience in exposing conspiracies." "We could both help train the next generation," Jimmy said, taking her hand. "Make sure no one else has to fight this battle alone." Their first kiss was gentle, healing, a promise of something new growing from the ashes of their shared pain. Around them, cherry blossoms drifted on the spring breeze, nature's reminder that beauty can follow even the darkest storms. 1 month later, Becca stood before her first class of military investigators, her Distinguished Service Cross displayed proudly on her uniform. The worn messenger bag sat on her desk, its battle scars telling the story of one woman's fight against corruption. "Your job isn't just to investigate," she told her students, seeing their eager faces. "It's to protect those who serve, to be the shield between honest soldiers and those who would exploit them." After class, she met Jimmy for dinner, their new routine as natural as breathing. Their relationship, forged in crisis and tempered by shared purpose, had blossomed into something neither had expected, but both treasured. "Ready to change the world?" he asked, taking her hand across the table. "Already did that," she replied with a smile. "Now we make sure it stays changed." In her office at the Military Justice School, Becca kept a photo from the airport confrontation. Herself, Jimmy, and Diana standing together against corruption. Beside it sat a new picture, Jimmy and her teaching their respective classes, building the future they'd fought to make possible. She had found her peace not in leaving the fight behind, but in preparing others to carry it forward. And in Jimmy, she'd found someone who understood both her scars and her strength, making her path ahead brighter than she'd ever imagined possible. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.